In the heart of a silent shipyard along the James River in Virginia, something extraordinary lies in wait, not sleeping but still, like a breath held beneath still skin. Forged over years by fire, sweat, and relentless ingenuity, a colossal warship formed from more than 100,000 tons of hardened, precision shaped metal rests atop a foundation of concrete blocks and national hope. This is no ordinary construction zone. It is a cathedral of industry, a place where America builds its titans. Here, the boundaries between engineering and legacy blur. The dry dock itself resembles a canyon carved by human hands, walls rising like cliffs on either side, their surfaces streaked with the marks of generations of labor. Beneath the towering gantries and steel cranes, the USS John F. Kennedy has taken shape. 1 inch, one weld, one bowl at a time. She is not just large, she is monumental. Longer than 3 football fields, taller than most city buildings, and more complex than any machine rolling on wheels or soaring through the sky. For 4 years, the shipyard pulsed with life. Thousands of workers, welders, pipe fitters, machinists, electricians, engineers, moved across her rising frame with the discipline of surgeons and the rhythm of artists. Some were third or fourth generation shipbuilders, their knowledge passed down like a sacred trust. Others were young, new to the work, but already carrying the weight of precision on their shoulders. They crawled through steel corridors, snaked wires through bulkheads, laid decks, mounted reactors, and pieced together a floating city designed for conflict, power projection, and peacekeeping alike. To the untrained eye, this stage of the ship's life might seem inert, motionless, cold. But in truth, every nut and bolt installed had been calibrated for a singular event, a ritual of engineering, a reckoning with physics. And then, on a clear day in October 2019, that moment came. With the press of a button, hydraulics engaged. Giant steel valves groaned to life. Beneath the ship's massive form, the gates to the James River opened. It wasn't a flood. It was a slow, dignified procession of water, 100 million gallons summoned with precision, guided with care. The dry dock, so long a cradle of concrete, began to yield. The river came in, not with fury, but with ceremony. Inch by inch, the tide rose. Water lapped at the ship's underside. Slowly, it crept around her hull. The massive keel blocks that had held her like open palms, lifting her, shaping her, cradling her, were no longer required. The laws of physics quietly took over. Buoyancy whispered. And then, something ancient and sacred happened. The USS John F. Kennedy floated. Not a metaphor, not a rehearsal. The 100,000-ton supercarrier, 4 years in the making and $13 billion in investment, rose from her earthly bed and met the element she was born for. She shifted in the water like a living thing, inhaling for the first time. Slowly, surely she found balance, and the steel city built to rule the sea became one with it. To those watching, from high on scaffolds, from the control tower, from the riverside barriers, it was more than engineering. It was transformation. The moment she floated was the moment she became. No longer a construction project, no longer blueprints made physical. She was now a vessel, bound for the oceans of a world she would soon shape through presence alone. But beneath the ceremony and statistics, beneath the hard steel and hydraulic lifts, lies a human truth. The Kennedy is not just a warship, she is a mirror of a nation's labor. Every weld a choice, every system a trust, every corridor a statement. She exists because Americans across the country, from rural suppliers to high-tech firms to seasoned shipwrights, believe in building something bigger than themselves, something permanent, something that would outlast them. And now, for the first time, she floated, not just on water, but on the legacy of every hand that helped raise her. Along the winding curves of the James River, nestled in the industrial heart of Newport News, Virginia, stands a place unlike any other in the United States. This is not merely a shipyard, it is a living monument to American craftsmanship, the last bastion where the impossible becomes reality, where nuclear power aircraft carriers, the most complex machines on Earth, are brought into being. Here, amid the roar of machinery and the hiss of welding torches, the USS John F. Kennedy was born, not in fragments scattered across assembly yards, but as a continuous, rising titan of steel. From keel to island, she was constructed as one unbroken form. a living spine of American strength, taking shape in full view of the river. This sacred undertaking could happen in only one place: Newport News Shipbuilding, the sole shipyard in America with the scale, technology, and institutional knowledge to construct a nuclear powered supercarrier. And the cradle for this marvel? A structure nearly mythical in its proportions: Dry Dock 12. Dry Dock 12 isn't just large, it is awe inspiring. Over 2,000 feet in length and 250 feet wide, it is a man made canyon carved into the earth, capable of holding the mass of a floating city. To grasp its scale, imagine 500 school buses lined bumper to bumper inside its vast walls, and still enough room to walk between them. It is in this yawning chasm of concrete and steel that the Kennedy rose, piece by piece. But scale alone does not define greatness. What sets this carrier apart is the manner in which she was built. While many ships today are assembled in prefabricated segments, bolted together like modular blocks, aircraft carriers like the Kennedy are constructed as a single unified structure. Each corridor, bulkhead, command deck, and engine room installed while the ship rests upon a grid of reinforced keel blocks. These aren't just support, they are the silent foundation beneath a national endeavor. By the time the final steel was laid, the Kennedy weighed the equivalent of more than 800 fully loaded jumbo jets. Every ton was earned, planned, machined, transported, installed, and inspected. More than 3,200 shipbuilders devoted their daily labor to her rise, their work orchestrated across a staggering web of complexity. Supporting them were over 2,000 suppliers, stretching from the shipyard gates to nearly every corner of the country. Each element of the carrier, whether it was a titanium valve forged in Ohio, a section of fiber optic cable spooled in North Carolina, or an avionics control panel engineered in California, was more than material. It was a contribution to something collective, an act of belief in a mission bigger than any single company, factory, or zip code. This ship didn't come from one city, it came from America itself. Wander the shipyard long enough, and you'll see the story written into faces and families. It's not uncommon to meet a father and son working side by side, or a mother training her daughter in the finer points of naval welding. For many, this yard is not just a workplace, it's a heritage site. Some homes nearby don't just feature family portraits, they feature blueprints of carriers built decades ago, framed with the same reverence as wedding photos. This isn't nostalgia, it's continuity. It's the unspoken understanding that what is built here matters, not just for today, but for generations. Because in Newport News, building an aircraft carrier is not just an industrial challenge, it is a moral and national act, a promise forged in steel, a trust placed in every hand that tightens a bolt, tests a circuit, or finishes a weld. And what they built. Those thousands of hands across hundreds of towns was never just a warship. It was never just metal and wire and code. It was a message, a decoration, an intention made real. The morning of October 29th, 2019 broke like any other: quiet skies over Newport News, the yard buzzing with routine motions, steam rising from coffee cups, boots crunching across gravel. But for those who had labored years beneath the hull of a steel giant, this was not just another day. This was the day the ship would meet the river. This was launch day. There was no fanfare, no blaring horns, just a quiet readiness hanging in the air, something sacred, understood without being said. Everyone on the team knew what was about to unfold. What they had built, what they had measured and welded and rewired for over 4 years was finally going to rise. But launching a ship like the USS John F. Kennedy isn't as simple as opening a valve and letting nature run its course. Flooding a dry dock of this magnitude is a carefully choreographed ballet of precision engineering, operational discipline, and mechanical trust. This is not a flood, this is a ceremony in stages. First, 10 feet of water, just enough to reach the keel blocks that have carried the ship's weight for years. At this depth, the initial pressure builds, sensors light up, structural tolerances are tested, systems once idle are reactivated. All eyes are on the numbers. Then, stage by stage, the water rises, creeping up her hull. Inches become feet, feet become momentum. Every gallon is measured, every flow rate is calculated, pumps hum in coordination, computer models mirror reality in real time. The James River patient and powerful, slowly floods into dry dock 12, not in haste, but in honor. Then, almost imperceptibly, it happens. A shift, a soft groan of steel as the laws of buoyancy replace the strength of concrete. The USS John F. Kennedy, once cradled on her keel blocks like a sleeping titan, begins to move, not forward, not back, but up. A vessel that had existed only in diagrams and on scaffolding now floats. A ship built to dominate oceans had just learned to breathe. The sensation is quiet, but it runs deep. In that instant, the carrier became something more. She had crossed her first threshold from structure to ship, no longer tethered to land, no longer theoretical. She now rested on the same element she was born to command. For the shipbuilders who witnessed it, it was unforgettable. Some wiped their eyes, others stood still in silence. Mike Butler, the program director for the Kennedy, later called it an event for the ages. Not just for the spectacle, but because it happened 3 months ahead of schedule. In an age where billion-dollar programs are often measured by delays and budget overruns, this moment stood apart. A testament to discipline, resilience, and relentless precision. Once afloat, the Kennedy was gently nudged from her position, guided by line handlers and tugboats, to the western edge of the dock where she would begin her next phase, testing, outfitting, and final preparations. Her hull, once supported by immovable concrete, was now cradled by the moving current. She had not yet entered combat, not yet launched a jet, not yet carried her first crew, but in that moment, rising silently on a tide of 100 million gallons of water, she had become. She had entered the river, and soon she would enter the world. Just over a month after her first float, on a crisp December morning in 2019, the ship returned to the spotlight, not to move, but to be named. The date was no accident, December 7, Pearl Harbor Day, a day that echoes through American history with solemn weight. 78 years earlier, the skies over Hawaii had erupted in fire and smoke. Now, on this anniversary, another symbol of American resolve stood gleaming in the early light, waiting for her name. And at the heart of this ceremony stood a woman whose presence connected past to present with quiet grace. Caroline Kennedy, daughter of President John F. Kennedy, the ship's namesake. She carried more than the champagne bottle in her hands. She carried memory, she carried legacy, and perhaps most poignantly, she carried her own history. Because this was not her first christening. 52 years earlier, as a young girl, Caroline Kennedy had christened the first USS John F. Kennedy, CV-67. Her small hands had lifted the bottle. Her voice had spoken the name. She had sent a previous ship into service, one that would carry her father's name into seas across the world. And now, more than 5 decades later, she stood before a new vessel, larger, more advanced, more powerful, but carrying the same name, the same spirit, and the same weight of national trust. There was no extravagant fanfare, no orchestration needed. The moment spoke for itself. She approached the bow. The crowd of dignitaries, veterans, shipbuilders, sailors, and families fell into stillness. And with a practiced motion, Caroline swung the bottle. It shattered cleanly, releasing a spray of white foam across the cold, gray steel. The sound of glass against metal rang like a bell of memory and new beginnings. The audience erupted into applause, but beneath the celebration was a deeper current, an understanding that this was not simply a ritual, but a transfer of something sacred. The christening marked the final step in the transformation, from hull number to name, from object to identity. She was no longer just VS-79. She was now USS John F. Kennedy, a name born of war and peace, a name that recalled moonshots and inaugural speeches, and a president who challenged a nation to aim higher, reach farther, and serve more nobly. Now, that name would once again ride the seas, embodying steel, speed, and power. And with that name came a responsibility, not just to deter and defend, but to represent, to carry forward the idea that America builds not only for battle, but for continuity, for the preservation of ideals across oceans, generations, and rising tides. In that moment, surrounded by the shipbuilders who forged her and the sailors who would one day call her home, the Kennedy became more than machine. She became legacy, and legacy, now awake, would soon be on the move. What makes the Ford class more than just the next evolution of American carrier design is not merely its size. It's what lies beneath the flight deck. Beyond the miles of piping, below the decks where jets sleep, within the labyrinth of sealed compartments and control rooms, lives a technological soul that sets these ships apart. The electromagnetic aircraft launch system, better known as emails. This system represents not just an improvement, but a paradigm shift in naval aviation. For more than 60 years, American carriers relied on steam catapults, an innovation that helped win wars, but carried its own weight, literally and figuratively. These systems were immense, driven by high pressure steam piped through long mechanical cylinders. They were loud, maintenance heavy, and put enormous stress on aircraft and pilots alike. It worked, but it belonged to another era. Emails changes all of that. Instead of steam, emails use electromagnetic force, the same principle that propels high-speed maglev trains or accelerates particles in cutting-edge labs. Here, it's applied with military precision. Long linear induction motors embedded beneath the flight deck create a moving magnetic field that accelerates aircraft along the catapult track with stunning smoothness and speed. The result? Faster launches, more frequent launches, and dramatically reduced wear on airframes and the humans inside them. Pilots no longer endure the bone rattling jolt of steam acceleration. Instead, they experience a steady, linear rise in G force, less violent, more controllable, and far easier on the sensitive electronics inside modern aircraft. But the real genius of emails lies in its versatility. Unlike older systems calibrated primarily for heavy, manned fighter jets, emails can be tuned to launch any flying platform, from the massive, fully armed F/A-18 Super Hornet to unmanned aerial vehicles, lightweight surveillance drones, or future aircraft not yet conceived. It's a system that evolves with its mission. This isn't a mere upgrade, it's a generational leap, one that redefines what a bear can do and how quickly it can do it. Of course, no leap forward comes without its stumbles. When emails was first introduced, it faced technical setbacks. The system fell short of its reliability goals, sometimes requiring maintenance after only a few hundred launches, far below the Navy's expectations. Critics were quick to voice doubt. Some questioned the viability of such a bold new system, but the Navy didn't waver. Engineers doubled down, hardware was refined, algorithms were rewritten, operators trained, problems were met head on, not hidden, not ignored, but solved. Today, those doubts have been laid to rest. Aboard the USS Gerald R. Ford, the first Ford-class carrier and technological sibling of the Kennedy, more than 22,900 aircraft have been successfully launched and recovered using emails and its paired advanced arresting gear. These are not simulations. These are real-world operations performed at sea in varying conditions with operational crews. The system has proven not only functional, but foundational, a critical pillar of the Navy's future. And soon, aboard the USS John F. Kennedy, that same system will fire again. Not with steam, not with smoke, but with silence, speed, and the pulse of electromagnetism, heralding a new chapter in the way American power takes to the sky. Every inch of the USS John F. Kennedy carries the imprint of American hands. Not anonymous, but known. Not replaceable, but essential. Welders with decades of muscle memory in their fingertips. Software engineers who write code that will guide aircraft in low visibility skies. Nuclear technicians whose precision leaves no room for error. Quality inspectors who measure tolerance down to the width of a strand of hair. They are the living infrastructure behind the steel, and without them, the ship is nothing more than parts. They're not simply workers, they are experts, operating at the very frontier of industrial possibility. In one of the only places on Earth where metal, power, and human will come together to create something so vast, so dangerous, and so necessary. Their work is exacting, it has to be. The systems they build, radar, weapons, propulsion, cooling, navigation, must perform perfectly, not just in calm seas, but in the chaos of war. There are no second chances at sea, no pause buttons. If a missile defense array fails, if a reactor pump malfunctions, if a catapult stutters under stress, consequences are measured not in dollars, but in lives. And so, these professionals work not only with tools, but with conscience. What's remarkable isn't just their technical skill, it's their mindset. In the face of changing demands, updated designs, revised standards, evolving technologies, they do not complain, they adapt. When the Navy requests a last minute improvement or a systems upgrade, they don't ask why now, they ask how fast. Because they understand something larger than the blueprint, the people who will one day walk these decks. Sailors who will sleep beneath the flight deck, launch jets into enemy airspace, or monitor sonar deep in the hull. For the builders, every decision is about protecting them. Every delay, absorbed in the name of improvement, is a wager in favor of readiness. Yes, there have been delays. No carrier of this complexity avoids them. The Kennedy, originally expected sooner, is now scheduled for delivery in 2027. But these aren't the delays of incompetence or disorganization. They are the result of a system that chooses perfection over convenience, resilience over haste. When a better cable routing system is discovered, it's integrated. When lessons from the Gerald R. Ford reveal smarter ways to manage crew spaces or automate logistics, those changes are made, even if it means slowing progress. Because to those who built her, the Kennedy must be the best carrier she can be, not just the next one off the line. In every weld redone, every schematic updated, every system retested, there is a quiet but unshakable ethic. Don't rush the mission. Earn it. And when she finally sails, she will do so as more than a warship. She will be a moving tribute to the men and women who labored to get her there. A floating monument to American labor, innovation, and care. Because behind her engines, behind her electromagnetic catapults and radar towers, is a force no adversary can calculate and no machine can replicate. The human hands that built her. When a ship like the USS John F. Kennedy enters international waters, it does more than displace sea. It reorders strategy, alters calculations, and sends a message heard far beyond radar range. These vessels don't just move through oceans, they move through geopolitics. Because the supercarrier is not just a warship, it is a floating embassy of power, a sovereign slice of the United States, mobile, autonomous, and backed by the full weight of American military doctrine. Its presence alone can stabilize or disrupt a region. That message was unmistakably delivered in late 2023 when rising conflict in the Eastern Mediterranean, sparked by renewed tensions following Hamas's attacks on Israel, drew global concern. While diplomats deliberated and alliances whispered behind closed doors, the USS Gerald R. Ford did not wait. She deployed. There were no last minute airfield agreements, no need for boots on foreign soil. She needed no permission to arrive. She was already self sustaining, already armed, already operational. Within hours, she was there, ready, visible, and fully capable. Her flight deck became a deterrent, her radar systems a silent warning. Her mere presence shifted the balance of power. This is what a four class carrier does. It buys time, it projects resolve, and it speaks the unspoken language of readiness. The Kennedy will soon join that same tier of capability. When fully operational, she will carry up to 90 aircraft, including the F 35 C Lightning II, the world's premier stealth fighter, capable of penetrating the most advanced air defenses on Earth. From strike missions to surveillance, close air support to nuclear deterrence, her hangar deck will house not just jets, but strategic flexibility. But no carrier sails alone. A four class ship is the beating heart of a carrier strike group, a floating constellation of coordinated power. Around her move guided missile destroyers, cruisers, logistics vessels, and often a fast attack submarine, submerged and silent beneath the formation. Together, this is not a ship. It is a mobile military ecosystem capable of launching precise violence or rapid humanitarian relief depending on the mission. And yet, the impact of these carriers extends far beyond the edge of the flight deck. The four class program, including the Kennedy, is an economic engine, generating not only military advantage, but hundreds of thousands of American jobs. From the ironworkers of Ohio and the coders of Silicon Valley to the machinists of Indiana and the logistics firms of Texas, the carrier's systems, its radar arrays, jet blast deflectors, launch rails, power converters are all born of American industry. And these aren't just defense contracts, they are livelihoods, innovation hubs, and skills pipelines. They support local economies, they sustain legacy trades, they advance national technology. Even America's allies have taken notice. Countries with strong naval traditions, like France, have opted to adopt emails, the electromagnetic launch system pioneered aboard the Ford class. When other nations begin building their own next generation carriers, many will carry American systems at their core. Proof not only of U.S. technical superiority, but of its enduring influence. Because the Kennedy, like her sister ships, is more than steel and strategy. She is a symbol of freedom, of reach, of deterrence without invasion, of presence without apology. When she arrives anywhere in the world, she will not knock, she will already be there. The Ford class carriers are not just built for today's battles, they are engineered to outlast today's assumptions. These ships were conceived with a horizon far beyond the present, designed not only to dominate the seas in 2025, but to remain lethal, relevant, and adaptable well into the 2070s and beyond. Each vessel is constructed with future warfare in mind. The Kennedy, like her sister ships, currently uses only half of her available electrical generation capacity. The rest remains untapped by design, a strategic reserve of power, silently waiting for the next generation of technology to arrive. This is not a limitation, it is an invitation to innovate. As energy hungry systems like direct energy weapons, electromagnetic railguns, next gen radar suites, and AI integrated defense systems continue to emerge, these carriers are already prepared. Their internal power grids, cooling systems, and digital architecture were built not just to accommodate upgrades, but to encourage them. Where older carriers face obsolescence through rigidity, the Ford class is fluid by design, built to evolve in real time. But the future of these ships is not only technical, it is also symbolic.